we speak creates form. Our words go out and connect to create. That sound like unity? I love this from, oh, you haven't started, have you? Have you started? No, okay.
We are recording.
Oh, well, you're going to cut this part then.
I am, yes.
Okay, all right. I'll tell you about this part later.
Okay. Hi.
Hi.
Are we gonna run out of material?
Never.
Never.
You and I could talk forever about anything, I think.
So obviously right now there's some stuff going on in the world.
There is.
And there's always stuff going on in
There's
the world.
always, yeah.
But in terms of what's going on in the Middle East, it's been, I don't know how much of the news you've seen on it or paid attention to. I've seen enough and heard enough to know that my heart aches and I fear for many people, of course, in that region,
Yes.
but for the world as a whole.
That's interesting you say that, because I'm a person who has stopped watching the news about 15 years ago because of the ache. I always felt if there was something I could do about it to neutralize it, perhaps I would watch, but my knowing about it isn't changing anything. And whenever there's something really significant happens, somebody tells me about it, what you're doing right now. So, yeah. It's but as you say, there's always that pain in our world.
Yeah.
Shows where we are on the spiral dynamics scale, right?
Yes. Yeah, and we can definitely bring, because
Yeah.
I've been thinking about spiral dynamics in terms of what this is. And although I don't watch the news per se,
Yes.
perhaps why I'm feeling the way I am is I've been on Twitter, which may
Oh, dear.
be that might be the worst thing you could ever
It might.
be on. But
Yes.
and I've thought about that what I'm very clear on from experiencing Twitter and around something like this is just how crazy the crazy gets. It is amazing to me the level of vitriol attacks. Is that the right word?
And righteousness, too, is the other
that
thing.
people have, and how they want to clobber one another.
Yes.
It's anyhow. Maybe I'll bring this in. So I was thinking about this in terms of spiral dynamics, because some of the things I have read very much remind me of the red meme, which started 10,000 years ago. And if I were to paraphrase it and cut it down, it's kind of like that idea of my God before me and is battling with me. And so when
Onward, Christian soldiers.
yes, like all of those things, right?
Yes.
If here I go, and my God is right, and your God is wrong, and so I'm going to bludgeon you to prove my God is better than your God. And I'm not trying to cut it down to that's what it is, but I really see that inside of what I have read and what I have been witnessing on news feeds and such as Twitter, Instagram, etc.
And of note, I think throughout at least recent history, as in 10, 20,000 years, it's been the three Abrahamic religions originating from the Abraham, which is Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, that are mostly all involved in wars and fighting. And yet they all teach love and peace. So what's missing here?
Yeah. What's missing? Well, so if we continue with the idea of spiral dynamics, and we have next, which started 5,000 years ago, was the blue meme, the purposeful authoritarian meme, and that's where you really got your laws, regulations, and discipline build character, and your real formal religion groups coming out of that. Next up would be the orange, the achievist strategic meme starting 300 years ago, and you want to think of science, societies prosper through strategy, technology, and competitiveness.
Personal success.
Personal success. And then 150 years ago, the green meme, which is communitarian, egalitarian, but still refreshes spirituality, brings harmony, and enriches human development, but there's still that the human spirit must be freed from greed, dogma, and diversiveness. So if you're not doing that, you're still wrong, right? Like there's like it's still not at the place of acceptance.
Yeah.
It's my way is right.
Right.
And if you disagree with my way, then shame on you, and I need to point that out.
Okay, but I won't kill you.
But in this case, I won't kill you. I'll just shame you to death, right?
And a lot of us are still there.
It's-
You know, I mean, there's good and bad aspects of every one of these stages.
Yes.
And to much of the world, to have reached the green stage is a real achievement.
It's true. And
Yeah.
and I know that I'm really,
Yeah.
parsing these down to
Sure.
some real basics.
Yeah.
There's a lot more depth to this.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea is that you transcend each one of these stages and you include
Mm-hmm.
the beauty from the stage before. So I know for me, for a fact, I have that red meme inside of me. I know that exists and has built within me the character that I am today. And hopefully I'm bringing the good stages of the red meme, that a break free from domination or constraint to please self and self-desire. It's like, that is a
That's a
part
good
of
thing.
what I want to do, but I don't want to do it at the cost of bludgeoning other people
Right.
with it.
Yeah.
And that's where the change comes, is you want to take these good pieces and move along with them. So there's no right or wrong. It's just a self-development spiral as you move
Yes.
up.
Yeah.
And those ones are all first tier
Okay.
spiral dynamics. The second tier, which if we just to put them in clarity now, and then this goes to the work of Dr. Claire Graves, who created this whole concept. We have next up the the integrative meme, which started about 50 years ago. And this is live fully and responsibly as what you are and learn to become. Understands that chaos and change are natural. So there's a definite forgiveness element to
Yes.
that, an acceptance
Opening, broadening. Yeah.
And then finally, the next stage in second tier would be turquoise, the holistic meme, starting about 30 years ago. Experience the wholeness of existence through mind and spirit. Holistic, intuitive thinking, and cooperative actions are to be expected. And I guess where I'll finish off on that is that throughout our history of humanity, there have been those before us that have already achieved that state. They are the great wisdom teachers that we look to, that have shown us that path.
Yes.
But as far as society moving as a whole into those, it feels like we're getting closer to that place now. There's probably more people now moving into the yellow second tier than obviously there were 300 or 400 years
Yes.
ago.
In my lifetime, I've seen a shift.
Yes.
But it could be a lot faster. But it's, yes.
But no judgment.
We
right?
are humans, yes. I was just watching a video by someone named Sherry Mitchell, and I wrote down the spiritual illness that is a part of the destruction of life in all forms. So all of this fighting and bickering we do, it's a spiritual illness that makes us concentrate on ourselves as separate from the rest of life. And that it pervades the whole world at this point, I believe. Some of us manage to transcend that for short periods of time, but then we're always challenged again. There's no sudden shift. When we wake up, we can never not know what we know, but we can have naps from time to time, and it's an ongoing process and something that has to be tended to every day.
Naps, I like that.
Yeah.
Having naps
Yeah.
from, so the only way I can, well, at this point in my life, the only way I can manage all of these ideas and thoughts and experiences is to take it into my own experience of life and where I'm at. And there are still, within me, there is still that idea of, well, where's my handout? Where do I get, when do I get mine? And what about me? And so it comes up, and I find that I need to work on that, which allows me then to transcend that experience.
Yeah.
but I don't know that that's ever, like, I feel sometimes, is that ever going to go away? That first inkling sometimes is to protect myself, make sure I get what I need first,
Yep.
right?
Again, it comes down to a belief in yourself as separate from myself,
Right.
or the people over in Israel or Palestine or wherever people are struggling, you know.
Right. Or even when we think to the colonialism or the colonists
Colonization.
landing on the beaches here,
Right.
landing here on Turtle Island,
Right.
North America,
Right.
and
And we think of those people as being separate from us. You know, those were our ancestors. We didn't do it, you know, of course not, but our ancestors did, and we would have. And yet they did not think of themselves as colonizers. If you look at the old romantic movies and TV about the colonies, what do you think of when you go to the colonies? Oh, let's go to Jamaica for a lovely holiday where we can sit in the tropics and have the little native people look after. We don't think of colonists as a good thing. So we tend to think of ourselves as settlers, and that's a little different. You know, and probably true that most of our ancestors looked at themselves as settlers and pretty much were pawns of the colonizers. You know, so again, we don't need to be shaming ourselves or blaming ourselves, just recognizing that in that position, you know, probably most of the people who came to settle Canada thought of themselves as emigrating from England primarily. And they came here to form a colony. And the colony isn't the land. The colony, by definition, is the group of people that leave their homeland and go someplace to try and create a new culture. So Canada is not the colony. That group of people that came to Canada, that's the colony. That's Canada. Canada is Turtle Island. You know, so there's all these words that have innuendos, and you know, am I an immigrant? And many people today think of our First Nations people in the same category as immigrants, as sort of visible minorities, if you will. But they're totally different because they did not leave a native land. They are on the native land. You know, there's a whole different... when immigrants came to Canada, they knew that they could bring a little bit of their culture with them, but essentially they needed to assimilate into Canadian culture. And that's what the colonizers tried to do with the Indigenous people, is assimilate them. That's why we put them on reserves and taught them how to be farmers, just like us, when that was not their nature, was not their culture, was not their history.
right.
So, you know, we need to look at things through the other person's eyes. That was a bit of a rant that went away, wasn't it? Where were we?
Looking through other people's eyes. Well, I think that's what I know myself. I have tried to do that, and I've had incredible conversations with people. And there's a particular person who I don't need to name, but whose voice rings in my ears as we discuss this, and something that they've always said to me, or said several times, and in the context of the fighting that's going on, is that when somebody is trying to kill you or end your culture, what would you do? Right? And so I know for me, when I take a step back and look at that, I like to think, oh, I would passively resist, right? But I don't think that's, you know, I'm not convinced that's reality for me, that I could not, you know, turn to that idea of returning the violence that is confronting me.
Yeah.
I just don't know. I've never been in that situation.
Well,
I like
you know,
to think I could.
It worked for Gandhi and it worked for Martin Luther King, and yet we still resist it. And what the alternatives didn't work. War has never worked. Nobody has ever won a war, and yet we still keep doing that. So why not take a chance on something else?
Right. And then this person would go, well, yeah, but they're dead.
Well, we're all going to be dead sooner or later. Yeah.
I know. I mess with that too. It's like, well, I am going to die. I know that. But, you know, do I want to cling on to my life as much as I can, that I'm willing to actually do the very thing that I don't want done to me to somebody else? That's what I see as kind of the big question.
Well, maybe because You know, I truly believe that most people would, not gladly, but easily lay down their life right now if they thought it would end war on this planet. But it seems like some of our actions are pointless because we're not seeing the results that we hope for. That was just something that came to me.
Well, no, that's a good point, because I know if it came to my kids, I would stand in front of the car, right, and push them aside. Like it would not be. I wouldn't even think about it. Of course, I would sacrifice.
Which brings us back to, you know, we can only do it one person at a time. Obviously, one person can never. Except that if we can remember that none of us is separate from any of us. And I mean, if a person doesn't get that, I don't know how you can get them to get it. You know, it's just that we are all so connected. Again, Sherry Mitchell, I think her name was, talked about the phantom limb phenomenon. That is, amputees who have lost a leg will often complain about itchy toes or pain in their ankle or something like that. So there's that cellular memory. And I think that's part of what the First Nations tradition with including the ancestors all the time. The sweat lodge is about, you know, connecting with the ancestors. Once something has been here, has been connected, it's never, despite time and space, it's never unconnected.
Right.
And it's all in that quantum level that we have to get to thinking, you know, that we're just one life process, all of us. Yeah.
Yeah, it would be nice if we could, you know, snap our fingers and have things shift. And yet, in spite of everything we've just talked about, for some reason, I am the eternal optimist.
Yeah.
That somehow we're going to overcome this.
I think the human race is evolving and has been for millions of years and probably will be for more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this then, because does it feel worse now in terms of aggression, of people choosing sides?
I don't think so.
Than it's ever, you know, because I'm trying to think. I was a kid during the Vietnam War, so I don't really know what that experience was like.
Yeah, no.
And obviously there was probably great divide, at least here, of how that looked. There was those on one side and those on the other side.
Well, you know, my parents went through 2 world wars, and it was the war to end all war. I've been told, and I don't know the statistics on this, but I've been told that at this time in history, there are more people than ever not at war. Like the percentage of the world at war is the lowest it's ever been. But it's also visible now because of social media and instant news and all that. So, you know, let's be optimistic.
Right. So then the perception could be, depending on what your filters are.
Yeah, absolutely.
So to your point where you've filtered out the news, that I just don't watch it, and if I need to know something.
Yeah, right.
And there are those that would argue, well, that's irresponsible. How could you be that way?
You have to know what's going on. Well, why do I have to know? And what difference does it make? You know, something that struck me, I don't know why this pops into my mind now, but remember when, you might not even remember, when Princess Diana died.
I do.
And the outpouring of grief was so just phenomenal. And I said even then, look, you know, this is sad, yes. This is a woman who's led a privileged life and has had, you know, made a lot of accomplishments and stuff, and it's sad that she's gone. And I think it's just, we can't focus on the enormity of the fact that there's still 30,000 children starving to death every day in our world. We cannot get our minds around that. So we focus on this one little tragedy, you know, and we need to, yes, it's sad, people die, and how are we living in the getting off on some strange rant. But that's interesting, the way we respond to, the way we're able to just put it out of our mind, that hundreds
Right.
of thousands of people are dying.
Because it's too big. Maybe
Yeah,
it's just
it's too big.
It's too big a thing, and but then maybe that shows up in that one
Yeah.
person all of a sudden
Focuses
touches
on-
people in such a way that maybe it's all this other grief is coming out with it,
Yes.
and that's our response. That's our vehicle to kind of let go of all that other stuff that maybe we're pushing to the side or trying not to
Exactly.
pay
Yeah.
attention to.
I'm coping. Yeah.
Coping, but I do want to kind of get back. So the perception. So if I make this practical, like, okay, well, how do I manage this? So
Yeah, what does unity teaching have to do with all this?
what does unity teaching have to do with all this? Well, and I don't even know if it's just unity. I think I would say it's new thought, science of mind teaching is that what we focus on in our lives is what we're going to see more of.
Yes.
And we're going to experience more of that. So in my own case, where I started with, I've been paying attention to what's going on Twitter and Instagram around what's going on in the Middle East. And I feel like, oh my gosh, this is the worst it's ever been, ever. And I don't, is that true? I don't know. Is it the worst it's ever been? It's certainly not.
It seems like it.
Yeah, it seems like it, but I'm not trying to downplay it. What I'm trying to get to the point of, if I stopped looking at that, then I would just know from somebody telling me, oh, there's this stuff going on in the Middle East, and I wouldn't be the wiser to it. I could, go out into the forest and do my meditation.
And everybody who's telling you something about the Middle East is telling you through a filter, as you said. I mean, you were sharing with me something that somebody had written
Yeah.
in a religious sense. And what we can do, because, there's no point in us going out and buying a gun and going off to the Middle East. What we can do is change our consciousness, which will go out and change other consciousness. So prayer, and a lot of people think prayer is just crazy. It is, if you think you're asking God to smote the enemy. But it's creative when you're sending thoughts and vibrations out into the world. And that's really the only arena we can work in, is right here.
Right. So affirming, if we bring it to unity now,
You don't want to pray for one side or the other. You want to pray for your enemy. Jesus said that, did he not?
Yes.
Pray for your enemy.
Right. So affirming,
Yeah.
and the enemy here isn't one side or the other.
No.
The enemy here is victimization, is the ego, is the bloodshed, is the anger, all of those things that are coming up that is causing the hatred. That's the enemy here. So praying for that to be
Dr. Ken,
released.
again, Dr. Ken Gordon, always used to, oftentimes when there was any kind of tension at all, he would say, the only thing that's happening here is love unfolding. So what's going on in the Middle East from both sides is love of country, love of God. They can just see that in each other. It's the best they can do right now to love. So we need to bless them all, surround them all in love, forgive them all.
Forgive ourselves.
And appreciate that because again, another sort of metaphysical teaching is anything you see out there is a reflection of what's in here. It's spiral dynamics too, So those people are having that experience on behalf of all of us.
Yeah.
So we need to have the experience of love and forgiving on behalf of all of them.
Right. Well, that seems like a really good place to leave this conversation. Love and forgiveness. The practice, the ultimate practice.
Yes.
Love and forgiveness. Thanks, Rev P.
Bless them all.
Yeah, bless them all. Namaste.
Namaste.